What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of Dank Times Danker Thoughts with me, your boy, Angelo Grosso. And it's been a while. It's been a hot minute since I've recorded one of these. Life has been pretty busy, and when it hasn't been busy, I have been exhausted either from work, family stuff, personal stuff, lady stuff, and I didn't feel like recording. And the third reason is, like I said last podcast, I've gotten back into the the black hole that is Skyrim, a video game, and that is also taking up a lot of my free time. And I'm gonna curb back once I'm done playing because it is taking up a considerable amount of time that I have used to do other fun things like this, like writing. I'm not watching as much podcasts or news, or I'm not doing enough reading. There's a list of issues that have come from me playing Skyrim this much. But I'm almost done with the game. Only got a few more weeks that I'm gold. But no. So we have a little bit of catching up to do. This podcast is going to be pretty light on the news. I don't really feel like doing another 40-minute inspection about Russia and Ukraine. I don't feel like going into Ketanji Brown, the new Supreme Court hopeful justice. And that's really what's been dominating the news the last week or two. There's been some minor stories involving other nations, but it's involved with Russia, Ukraine. There is some more local news with the mask and the vaccine mandates, and Pfizer wants a fourth shot coming out. Fauci's talking about how we may not need to shut down like we have, but you may still want to get your boosters and vaccines, which I can't argue with. And but speaking of COVID, there is a rumor of a new variant that's going around China, Hong Kong, Europe. Although early reports, now again, I'm no expert, but early reports are that it's as mild or milder than Omicron. So it's nothing that should shut down society like we've have done in the past. Plus, something like 60, almost 70% of this country is double vaxxed. So I think we can move on from that. But anyways, there is a lot of sports to talk about, but I'll try to do that quickly for my female listeners. But what have I been up to? Well, let me update you all on the date that I had. I spoke last podcast about there was a few ladies that I connected with on the dating apps, and one was the cream of the crop. She instantly rose to the top. I was infatuated with her. I was infatuated with the idea of her, I guess I should say. I made a error of judgment on my part, and I started to put her on a pedestal, which I have begged myself not to do anymore because the only outcome is hell. But anyway, let me rewind a little bit here. So one of the reasons why I was impressed, infatuated, excited, whatever term you want to use, the reason why I was pumped to see this lady is that, and no offense to any of my ex-girlfriends or ex-relationships or flings, whoever, if you listen to this podcast, you're addicted to abuse. I don't know why you're listening to your ex's podcast, but hey, no judge. She was one of the more, if not the most intelligent, like book smart woman that I have connected with. Maybe ever. She has a psychology degree. She and I were talking about just a wide swath of in-depth, intelligent conversations. We're having very good dialogue is my point. And I found myself weirdly very attracted to the idea of a psychologist, of doing therapy for free. And plus, she was good looking. She was confident. She had a good laugh, a good sense of humor. And according to the profiles and the little bit that we talked about, we agreed on a lot of important foundational relationship building blocks, such as wanting a family, wanting to get married, wanting to settle down, how much we hate being on the dating apps. She was Mexican, but I don't give a fuck about that. There was a little bit of confusion with me. I was thinking down the road, if things worked out with us, does she have a green card? Is she on a work visa, student visa? I don't know. But again, that was me thinking way too far ahead. I was thinking, you know, months and years and ahead, whereas I was trying to talk myself down from the ledge of excitement and saying, you know what, let's just have a date first. Let's just see if she is as awesome in person as she is through text. And so we went out last week. Oh, I forgot to say, we also didn't go out on a first date until almost 3 weeks after we started talking, which is a long time for me anyway. Usually, when I'm this excited or there's already a good vibe, a good connection, usually I will reach out to them within a week and a half, usually, or sometimes even sooner. But our schedules weren't aligning, and she tended to have pretty busy weekends, albeit I also had busy weekends around the same time. And she also gave me a little bit of shit because she said, I didn't think you were ever going to ask me out when we actually scheduled a date and had reservations and whatnot. And I said, are you kidding me? I asked you out on a date like 4 or 5 days after we started talking. There was a little miscommunication there. I did, and she was saying that I didn't, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, I liked to be playfully challenged. I like to be, well, for the lack of a better word, I like to be critiqued. I like to be judged. Not to be judged. No, that's not the right word. But yeah, I like to be challenged. I like to have my beliefs. I like to have my ideology. And I like to have, what makes Angelo tick challenged every now and then, as long as it's challenged in the right way. She was never mean. She wasn't judgmental. She wasn't a cunt or anything like that. But because of her pedigree and her degree, she came at these conversations, these dialogues we were having from a perspective that I found refreshing and very alluring. And I was instantly attracted to her brain and her personality. And she's also pretty attractive. So, again, I got kind of worked up for the first week and a half or so. A week before the date, I tried to curb back the communication a little bit because I could see that I was getting worked up. I was getting excited. I was starting to plan things, which is so stupid. So I kind of backed off. We found a date to meet. I made reservations at Duke's Chowder House, which, oh my God, I love Duke's. If you like seafood, what the fuck are you doing? Get to Duke's. Now, she was very, well, I hate using this word. I'm discussing a very intelligent, smart, accomplished woman, but she was very cute in the sense that she wanted me to explain a lot of things to her about things she didn't understand. Because she trusted me. She trusted my opinion on things. By the way, she also listened to a few of my podcast episodes and had glowing reviews, and she really enjoyed it. So again, plus, 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 plus. But she did not know the difference between a shrimp and a prawn. She had never had lobster or crab, but she loves fish and seafood, but she didn't have many seafood. But so that's what I'm saying. She was very, for the lack of a better word, she was very book smart. And I'd like to think you have to be a level of street smart coming where she comes from Mexico. She was a nanny with a very rich family. So she's got her shit together. That was something else that was extremely attractive to me. So, knowing all this, we were very open about our excitement to meet each other. She did not hide her feelings. I did not hide mine. So, it's no surprise that when we met, we were all smiles. There was hugs instantly. Even though this was the first time I'm meeting this person, I felt like I already knew her pretty good. In fact, we even joked about what topics of conversation we were going to have during the dinner. She wanted to know a lot about me, and she was upfront with saying, well, obviously because of my degree in, psychiatry, I'm a good listener. So she wanted to listen, and I warned her, well, I can talk, okay? Boy, can I talk. I'm also a damn good listener, but I will always talk. Even on awful, awful dates, I have always been able to fill the awful void of awfulness with humor, with jokes, with conversation, anything. And I told her, well, don't let me do all the talking. So we met, and I brought up some of the conversations we wanted to talk about. She was really involved in wanting to know past traumas. She wanted to know about my childhood, my upbringing, my parents. She wanted to know what makes me tick. How did I get to where I am? Because I don't think this is narcissistic, but it may sound it, but she was impressed with me. She said that I have a great voice, I have a good ear. She just respected and admired the fact that I can talk about anything. I have opinions about everything. I'm an avid, good listener. She liked my thoughts and opinions and ideologies that I put on the podcast. So she was impressed with me. And she also said, you were the only guy that I have met on dating apps that could hold a conversation, that had the intelligence to hold intellectual conversations with me. And you're just not a you're not a fuckboy. She didn't say that, but I got what she was saying. And I was, I was very open with what I'm looking for. I'm looking for marriage and family and kids and all that garbage, which I do want. And she respected how vulnerable and open and honest I was. So again, the foundation was already set before we met. Now, the date lasted a couple hours. I did do the majority of the talking, but I did bring up a few times, hey, I'm doing all the talking here. Surely you want to give me your insight on something, or I told you about, a story about me getting bullied in school and how that affected me, durka, durka, durka. Surely you can tell me something. But she kind of waved me off a lot of the times and just said, no, keep talking. I'm enjoying this. But I will honestly say that I probably did 75 to 80% of the talking on the date. And the date was over 3 hours. And I had no alcohol. I had some coffee. And what the hell did I order? Seafood pasta for sure. I think it was clams. Was there salmon or trout in there? There was definitely prawns. But anyway, I don't think you guys care what I ate. But one of my biggest fears when I go on dates is that I talk too much. I don't want to do that. I want to have a good balance. I feel like I'm pretty good at gauging people's mannerisms, their vocal context, their facial expressions. I feel like I'm good at reading people is my point. So when I talk too much, I feel like I can pick that up. I will make a joke about it, and then I will kind of give the conversation over to them. But it is something that I've struggled with in the past. And I will say over the last few years, I like to think I have grown positively and I've had progress in that area where I try my fucking hardest not to just steamroll the conversation. So it was a little uncomfortable on this date that I was doing a lot of talking. I brought some stuff up to her like, are you sure you don't want to talk? Sometimes she did, but often she didn't. And so I thought, well, maybe this is what she wants, Well, that's all I can really think about. But anyway, a couple hours in, we called it. The restaurant was closing, so we called it, and we hugged. We walked out to the parking lot. Her friend was picking her up. I was walking in my car. We hugged, and that was it. I thought the date went swimmingly well. I was excited for round 2. I texted her when I got home to make sure she was home okay and to let her know how my thoughts on the evening was. And yeah, that was it. Now, I should have known what was up by the speed of her response, which was none at all that evening. And she didn't respond to me the next day until midday. So I already was kind of feeling, well, she maybe doesn't feel the same way I feel. And, well, obviously, you can tell by the tone of my voice that it did not work out. Because when I asked her the next day, when are you free next? I'd like to see you again. She wrote back saying, no offense, but I don't think we're a good match. And your boy was shooketh. I was shook to my core. This is only the second time that I can remember in my life where I was this shocked, surprised, and caught off guard by a woman. I am usually the one that has to break the terrible news of, hey, I'm sorry, I don't think this is working, I don't think we should see each other again, I wish you luck. That's me. That's me. That's what I say. And yeah, so she gave me her reasons, and I tell you, it ruined my Sunday and my Monday because I just could not believe how wrong I was in believing that this worked out. and that she was impressed, or as impressed with me as I was with her. And so when I asked her, well, I'm very caught off guard here. I'm very surprised, if I'm being completely honest. Why do you say that we're not a good match moving forward? Now, before we went on our date, she did have some concerns with me, and I had some concerns with her. Some of my concerns with her was the work visa, student visa, visa. And I hate, maybe this is me just being a stereotypical American single male or whatever, but when I have gone on dates or been in relationships with people who were not born in America, that has sometimes come up to be an issue. But if I truly, love or like or whatever, if I see myself with this person, I could give a shit whether they're here legally, illegally, on a visa, short term, long term, doesn't matter. It's worth it. So that was one way on the back burner to me. But there were some other minor things. Now, she was very open about her displeasure about my marijuana habits because she cannot do marijuana. She's done it a few times and she hated it. It gave her paranoia, panic attacks. She's hated it. And so she did kind of frown on my everyday marijuana usage. But she was very good with telling me that there's no judgment on her end with that, but she is worried about it. And I told her, hey, I'll be the first one to tell you that I probably, well, there's no probably about it, but I do too much marijuana, especially during the pandemic. And I told her I already have plans to cut back once I go back to work. And in fact, I have cut back before then. I used to smoke a lot more than I do now, but I told her basically that, yes, I'm fully aware my marijuana intake is a little high, but I also will tell you that it's given me much more positive impacts on my life than anything negative. It doesn't take away my drive. It doesn't make me lazy. I don't gain weight on it. Although cliche, stereotypical things about marijuana, I feel like they don't happen to me enough for it to be a concern. But that was a concern of hers. She also told me that based on her own life and her family and friends' experiences, she's not wanting to rush into anything. She doesn't want to settle with anything. She doesn't want to stay in a relationship to be nice. And that's when I knew I had to meet her, because that's exactly how I feel. But she also, I think that was her way of telling me that she wasn't really looking for anything super serious, and I didn't pick that up. So that's on me, a little bit on her for not being more open about it. So those were a few things that she brought up, but the one that killed me, actually there's two things that killed me that she brought up that I kind of got a little pissy, but I didn't. There was no point in fighting with her. She already had her mind made up. I wasn't going to try to force my way back into her life because it wasn't going to work. There was no point. I didn't need to fight for her. She said she was unhappy with the amount of talking I did during the date, and I, at my house I lost it, but on the phone I said, "Are you really?" Because I distinctly remembered multiple times during the date asking her and joking about, "I'm doing a lot of talking. Please talk more. Please, I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your backstory on things." And it never happened. She didn't want to. She said I talked too much, that maybe I could not tell that I was doing it. And I said, no, you must have spaced out about 20 minutes of that conversation where I was asking you multiple times about it, but whatever. So that kind of pissed me off. That's when I realized, oh, this kind of introspection, kind of therapist, they're basically breaking you down a little bit. It's kind of a clinical judgment. This is never ending with her. It doesn't stop, which I think would get very tiresome very quickly if your partner is just constantly analyzing you, which I thought would have been fun because I like having those kind of conversations. I view myself, maybe again, this is my hubris talking, as an unlicensed therapist. I feel like I'm pretty intelligent and pretty open and honest, and I am aware of my issues, my traumas, and how they affect me and how they have affected me, and how I can look at some of my friends and family and pick up the same things and talk to them about it in a nice, respectful manner. So that set me off a little bit. That's when I was like, okay. So she said I talked too much, even though I told her many times during the date, please talk more. she said that the marijuana was always an issue, but she also told me that I don't judge. Well, obviously she's judging. And the other one, which completely came out of left field, which was that she didn't like my views on spirituality. And I had to double check her dating profile, but her profile said religion is unimportant and that oh God, I wish I had a profile here. I believe it said she was agnostic like me. And there was a point in the date where I made a religious joke that made her not super upset, but it did make her upset. And I had to kind of back off a little bit and say, well, I was just joking. I apologize if I offended you. The joke was, because she asked me about religion, and I told her I'm agnostic. I'm ambivalent about it. I don't pretend to know what happens after we die or where we go or what we do. I have my opinions on it. I have my imagination about it. She said, oh, what do you imagine? And I was telling her kind of a joking scenario. I'm at the pearly gates and I see what heaven is, and I don't want to go into heaven because it's full of losers. It's full of Mormons and Jehovah Witnesses and Ned Flanders. I don't want to go to heaven if that's what heaven is like. I want to go to hell where all the cool people are. Again, I was smiling. I was joking. It was obvious that I was joking. She said, what do you mean you want to go to hell? And I said, well, you know how in history the victors write the history books. Maybe that's what happened between the war of heaven and hell. When Lucifer lost, if he did lose, he didn't get a chance to write his Bible, only God did. And that's how we got the Christian Bible from God's perspective. We don't have anything from Lucifer's perspective. Maybe Satan and hell just needs a better PR department. It was just a stupid shtick, a joke I was doing. It offended her. I apologized. And she said that wasn't going to work because she was deeply spiritual. And that's when I said, okay, that wasn't on your dating profile. We never talked about that. You should have said something at dinner. So that's when I was like, okay, she's putting off this vibe that I would say she is the most part what she puts out, but there was something she was keeping close to the vest. And I feel like she was a little bit too judgmental towards me on certain things, but I don't blame her because when you have an analytical mind, like she and I do, you pick up on these things and it's hard to let them go. You try not to judge, you try to be fair and compassionate, but that doesn't mean you have to be stupid. And you settle and you look at red flags and you force them to be green flags because you want to be nice. She also said that everyone, in her opinion, should be in therapy, and she was challenging why I'm not in therapy. And I said, well, even after everything we talked about, do you really think that I need to be in therapy? I feel like I have a good handle on things. If I ever feel the need to, if I can't figure something out and I can't make myself better, then I will be the first person to jump into therapy. But I don't think that I need to, and she could not accept that. She is in therapy, and she believes everyone should be in it. And I said, well, I'll meet you halfway. I think the mass majority of people need to be in therapy. God knows my friends and family need to. But sometimes there's people, and again, this could be narcissistic, it could be pride, whatever. But I was telling her, to my knowledge, I have nothing keeping me back in certain areas. If I get sad or depressed or anxious or angry or horny or sad or happy, whatever, I'm such an analytical person in my head that I can usually figure out how did I get to this point. So, for example of that, when we were having this, we're not going to see each other again conversation, sure, for a first couple minutes, I was infuriated. And I said, well, let's analyze this. Why am I upset? And I could see, because I built her up in my mind. I let myself daydream a little bit. I let my imagination run a little bit wild. And I looked past certain things that she was given off. Now, that's not to say that she was completely infallible. She did keep some things from me. She also was sending me photos of kissy faces or duck lips or whatever, so she was given off to me that she was interested in me romantically, even after we had our first date, and she hadn't said no second date yet. So it's a little frustrating, but the good thing is I can take away positives from it. And we ended things on a positive note. We both wished each other well. She did do the female thing, which drives me fucking nuts. So after we kind of settled things and said, okay, well, it's not going to work out. I wish you luck. she kept praising me, saying that, but you're still very funny. You're still very knowledgeable and intelligent. I like your podcast. I like your conversations. I would really like to be friends. And I said, I'm 35. I'm not trying to make any more single lady friends that we're at least not going to bump uglies every now and then. And I said, no offense. I'm not interested in that. And she said, well, I understand. Most of my dates, or most of the guys I go out on dates with, we end like this. She also told me during the date that the mass majority of guys that she goes on a date with end up blocking her. And again, I think that's due to a lot of spineless, weak, self-destructive men. But if I was her and I go out on 20 dates, let's say in my life, and 19 out of the 20 guys end up blocking me, I would have to ask, maybe I'm doing something. Now to me, I didn't block her. I just deleted the profile, deleted the conversations, but I didn't block her. But I'm not looking for a friend. I'm not, especially if I meet someone on a dating app. So it's a good cautionary tale, especially in this day and age with online dating. Try to keep yourself grounded. Try to not make these people out to be some kind of angelic figure. I know why I was infatuated with her, because of her brain and her personality. I mean, when someone's attractiveness comes in third, I think that's a good sign. So, c'est la vie. It didn't work out. But, I learned some things. Hopefully she learned some things. We can move forward. I am going on a date tomorrow. And there's some other girls I'm talking to. But I got to be honest, none of the girls that I'm going to see or talking to, is there a connection like I had with this one? Let me call the girl that didn't work out Sapporo, because that's the beer she had. Sapporo didn't work out, but I was extremely excited about the possibility of a future with Sapporo, and I haven't felt that future longing with someone in, God, years. So it feels good to feel that. It's good to know that those emotions are still there, but the shock and surprise of reading that morning text about not wanting to see each other again is devastating. Only the second time in my life that I can remember this happening, and the first one was worse because I worked with the girl, but this one is fine. And the issues she brought up, I think, would have ultimately doomed us if we did continue to see each other, or if we did decide to make a go of a relationship. Ultimately, if she was that spiritual, that into analyzation of somebody, and pushing therapy nonstop, and I don't want to say judging me on marijuana, but having it be a problem to the point where she can't be with someone because of it, it wasn't going to work. It just wasn't going to work. So, say lovey, it stings a little bit. It stung really bad when I got the text, but, you live and you learn, people. You live and you learn. But anyway, enough about the trials and tribulations of love. Let's move on to some other fun stuff. Now's the time for everyone's two favorite subjects that I do every week, the news and sports. We're pretty light on news, so I can knock that out quickly. I've spoken about Gary Chambers before on here. In fact, I think I even played a clip or two of his. He is running for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana. He is the one that made the campaign ad of him lighting up a joint. He made another video of burning the Confederate flag. And on his YouTube channel, he's been releasing speeches that he's been giving around the country. I just watched one that he gave in Las Vegas. I watched one that he was talking in his hometown of Louisiana. And I highly, highly, highly recommend you check out Gary Chambers. At the very least, go to YouTube and watch his campaign videos. I've donated money to him. But again, I hope that I'm not making the same mistake I've made with some other politicians, where they're brand spanking new, they're saying all the right things, I give them money, I build them up, and then they tear me a new asshole a couple years later. Tulsi Gabbard is a prime example of that. I was a staunch supporter of her ever since she came on the scene, I believe in 2011 or 12. And even though she had a checkered past, to say the least, it did not concern me because she was saying all the right things. And when she would talk about the past, she would say, again, all the right things about how she was wrong, she had mistakes, she's a better person, it's all about growth, yada, yada, yada. But then she went off the fucking rails the last year and a half, 2 years, so I had to write her off. Same thing with Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg. I donated money to those cucks, and I wish I had that money back, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So, I still believe in some of the politicians, mind you. I'm not going to say every politician that I've ever been excited about has prison sexed me later. No. Nina Turner, I still love. Bernie Sanders, of course. Most of the squad. But, you just have to be careful who you praise internally and outwardly. But I feel like Gary Chambers is a good one to praise here. His campaign slogan is pretty simple. Do good, seek justice. So, anyway, check him out. Moving on to some other politics here. Jon Stewart, one of my favorite political commentators, was asked earlier this month if he would ever consider running for office. And this is not the first time the prospect of Jon Stewart running for local government, federal government, or the presidency has come up. But he's always said no, or he's always made a joke about it. Either way, he's just kind of waved it off. But a couple weeks ago, he changed his tune. Jon Stewart's new show on Apple TV, I don't get Apple TV. I already pay for too many streaming sites, some I don't use enough to warrant me paying them per month. I can't pay another one for Apple TV. The good thing about Jon Stewart is he puts clips up on YouTube almost every single day, and they're not just, 4 to 5 minute clips. Sometimes they are, but I just watched a 40-minute interview he did talking to, what was her name? It's not important, her name, but the issue they were talking about was, why are we trusting the oil companies or just the fossil fuel industry to fix climate change or help us with climate change? And it was a very illuminating conversation. My point being, Jon Stewart uploads a lot of these long flowing conversations that you just don't get with your standard news service. That's why I'm a huge proponent of the new media that's on places like YouTube, like SoundCloud, all these things. But anyway, Jon Stewart was asked, are you going to run for office? And he said, how do you not when you look at who's there? Jon Stewart says it's impossible not to consider running for office himself when he sees the shitheads who are currently in Congress. Oh God, how do you not? Stewart told Kara Swisher in an episode of her New York Times Sway podcast when asked if he ever thought about a political campaign. How do you not when you watch all that and you're like, oh my God, what is this? This is terrible. It's like when you get in a car and one driver's drunk and you're like, did you ever think about taking the wheel? You're like, yeah, I did. I don't know that I'd have the temperament for it, the 59-year-old comedian and former Daily Show host said. After Swisher noted the dispositions of former President Trump and Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's having the patience, like, how come that person gets to still be here? Make that person leave. I also think, like, there's a lot that goes around that has nothing to do with passion or care about issues or wanting to help people. That has to do with fundraising and the way the game is played and the lack of perspective on it. Said Stewart, a frequent visitor to Capitol Hill, as he's advocated for veterans exposed to burn pits and for 9/11 first responders. Sometimes I feel like, well, I can be more effective on the outside than on the inside. The Emmy Award winner also ripped Republicans for what he described as their defense of Russian President Vladimir Putin amid his invasion of Ukraine. Some of the comments last month, Trump referred to Putin as smart and pretty savvy before later criticizing Russia's military offensive as a Holocaust. I think for years it's been pretty clear that they would much rather do a deal with Putin than House Speaker Pelosi. They view Putin as a defender of Western civilization. They view him as an ideological brother. So this got me thinking. I revere Jon Stewart. I have since I first watched The Daily Show way back in high school. I'm talking mid 2000s, I want to say I started watching, 2003, 2002. The first time I discovered Comedy Central's The Daily Show, and I've been hooked on him ever since. And I've only grown to respect and admire him more over these last few years. And his new show, again, check out YouTube or Apple TV, whatever the fuck you want to do. I think it's called The Problem with Jon Stewart. Yeah, I mean, I think he would make a good president. And I mean, the obvious comparison is to Zelensky in Ukraine. He was a former comedian. Jon Stewart's a comedian. Zelensky's roughly the same age as Jon Stewart. So the parallels are there. And we've seen that this country could give a shit about electing an actual politician to hold political office. Donald Trump proved that. And I don't think it takes a a non-mentally challenged person to look at Trump and Stewart and see the differences. And I've been saying for a long time, the Democrats or a third party, they need someone of Trump's caliber in terms of his charisma, his sway over an audience, the way that he speaks. He can just take over. I don't know what to tell you, but I don't want to praise the man too much. But you watch those Republican debates, he pwned every single one of those Republicans that were going against him. And then they later sucked his dick. I mean, the way that he treated Ted Cruz. And then after Trump won, Ted Cruz never took his beautiful lips off Trump's orange Cheeto dick the entire 4 years of his presidency. If a man makes as many jokes about me and my wife's appearance as Trump did to Cruz, I wouldn't be putting his dirty dick in my mouth. But I'm not a Republican, so maybe I'm not used to that. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to see a comedian, political commentator rise up and run for office at least. And how you imagine Jon Stewart on these Democratic debates? Do you really think he's going to get schooled by the likes of Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Klobuchar, Buttigieg, O'Rourke? What's that black guy's name? Booker. I mean, name a Democrat that you think can out-talk, out-sway, or just out-charisma Jon Stewart. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. Joe Biden is a corpse already. He's not going to do it either. And if you grew up with Jon Stewart like I have, I feel like he's been very honest and open about where he stands on issues. I look at that list and I don't think there is another politician that I agree with their ideology more than him. Maybe a Bernie Sanders, maybe there's some others out there, but I mean, when people talk about the prospect of The Rock or Oprah or Michelle Obama running for president, I'm like, okay, but Jon Stewart, I mean, no offense to The Rock or Michelle Obama or Oprah, but maybe Michelle Obama has that political acumen, but my point is, Jon Stewart has been in the media for 30 years almost? He's seen some shit. He knows how to talk to these people. On his new show, he's talking to these high execs, these cabinet members, and he's not holding back. So I guess what I'm saying is he could do a lot worse than Jon Stewart for the next president. He would have my support. I would do everything I possibly could to get him elected. We have got to get away from these old, grizzled, white men. Now, Jon Stewart is a white man, but he's young and hip and cool. And just imagine the cabinet he would create. He's not going to put any Wall Street execs in there. He's not going to put any fossil fuel people in there. He's going to take shit seriously when it comes to climate change, income inequality, healthcare, the economy, veteran affairs. I mean, the guy has done it all in his career already. So anyway, I'll take Jon Stewart's dick out of my mouth, a la Cruz and Trump, but he's got my support. Moving on to the last story I want to talk about. And this is big news. It just came out today. This is from the Seattle Times. Workers at a Seattle Starbucks vote to unionize, hoping to send a signal of change to the food service industry. Woo, baby. Fuck you, Starbucks. A mile away from the flagship location where Starbucks launched at Seattle 50 years ago, a small group of local Starbucks employees huddled around an iPad under the bright lights of a hotel conference room and watched as they became the only unionized company-owned store in town. Let me read that again. They became the only unionized company-owned store in town. Unanimous, they shouted. hands clasped in the air. Unanimous, goddamn right. The vote, which the National Labor Relations Board announced Tuesday, is a especially symbolic win in the coffee giant's hometown as Howard Schultz returns as interim chief executive officer, and workers at more than 100 stores say they want to unionize. The store at Broadway and East Denny Way in the Capitol Hill neighborhood will become the 7th in the country where employees have voted in favor of unionizing with Workers United, an affiliate of the Service Employees International Union. Employees at 5 stores in Buffalo, New York, and 1 in Mesa, Arizona, have already voted yes, and 1 in Buffalo voted against unionization. Employees at 6 other Seattle locations have said they plan to unionize. 5 of them have filed petitions with the NLRB. Of the 13 employees at the store eligible to vote, 9 voted in favor, 1 ballot was challenged, and none voted against it. Workers at the Capitol Hill location said they were organizing because they wanted improvements to healthcare coverage and more input in company policies, and because they saw unionizing as a fundamental and necessary way to participate in Starbucks and its future partners. Next, the workers will negotiate with the company for a first contract. Starbucks has opposed unionization. In a statement Tuesday, a company spokesperson said, "We will respect the process and will bargain in good faith. We hope that the union does the same." Oh, you little judgy cunts. Throughout the national campaign, the union has accused Starbucks of retaliating against workers. Well, yeah, they've been firing people left and right. The company has denied the allegations. Of course they do, those scums. Last week, the NLRB issued a complaint alleging Starbucks wrongly disciplined 2 pro-union workers in Phoenix. The workers who organized the Capitol Hill store see their win as sending a broader message. Food service work is notoriously difficult to unionize, in part because of high turnover among workers, and the jobs are among those with the lowest unionization rates. Just 1.2% of employees in food services and drinking places are members of unions. In the past, maybe these were very transient jobs people only stayed in for a few years, but increasingly they are becoming people's sources of income and livelihood, said Sidney Durkin, who works at the Capitol Hill store. People in these positions are saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. This has to be better than it currently is. This is a signal for the larger food industry that times are changing and it is building towards something hopefully more sustainable. We want to kick down the door in the entire food service industry, said Sarah Pappen, who works at another Starbucks location in Seattle seeking to unionize. Workers sometimes struggle to get enough hours to make ends meet, but expanding the Starbucks effort into a larger transformation of the food service industry will be a tough prospect. Private sector union membership across the country remains at just 6%. Oh, Jesus, how disgusting. 6%. Ugh. By the way, we have a president who says he's very pro-union, and I hope he says something about this. I hope Biden tweets or does something acknowledging it and celebrating this. Private sector union memberships across the country remain at just 6%, and federal efforts to make it easier to form a union are stalled. Of course they are. The number of stores where Starbucks employees say they want to unionize is for now a small fraction of the company's 9,000 corporate-owned stores. Jesus, 9,000? It's hard to be optimistic about this turning labor movement around, said Ruth Milkman, a professor of sociology and labor studies at the City University of New York. But it's interesting in its own right as an expansion of the dilemmas facing young, college-educated workers. Growing interest in unions among young people is part of a broader trend of activism among young workers, often those with college education, Milkman continues. Enthusiasm doesn't always translate to union representation, but can secure other changes. When fast food workers began the Fight for 15, demanding $15 an hour and a union, they won a series of increases to the minimum wage, but the industry remains almost entirely non-unionized. That hasn't changed union density, but was successful on other fronts, Milkman said. Tuesday's Starbucks vote cements that new union push in Seattle, but it's not the first time the company's workers here have sought union representation. And then they go on about the history and how Starbucks tried fucking people over and did fuck people over. Let me read this a little bit here. Today, Starbucks often touts its wages and benefits, such as health care coverage, parental leave, and tuition coverage for Arizona State University's online programs. But a new generation of workers is likely to make a push that echoes the fight in the 80s. Workers are likely to call for a pay increase, allowing customers to leave tips on credit card orders, more consistent staffing, and more affordable healthcare that isn't based on hours worked. God damn, I hate how they fuck over the workers. You have to work 40 hours to get health benefits. Well, can you schedule me for 40 hours? No, we're going to schedule you for 30. Go fuck your mother. Oh, I hate it. I worked for jobs like that, and I have a lot of friends and family that work in shit-heeled jobs like that. Today, employees have to average about 20 hours per week to be eligible for healthcare benefits. Well, I got to give Starbucks credit there. Most companies, you have to work 40 hours, not 20. So as much as I shit on Starbucks, deservedly so, I have to give them bravo on that little tidbit. Even with Starbucks' comparatively higher pay, workers still say they struggle to cover rising costs of living in Seattle. Who fucking doesn't? I have a management position. I make $25 an hour. That should be enough. But the city in Seattle, it's simply not. You know? I think that says more about Seattle than it does Starbucks. But good on you. Fuck you, Starbucks. I hope the entire company gets unionized within the next 10 years. Ooh. Can you imagine the power that the workers will finally have? But anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to quickly cover the chaotic, erratic, just mind-numbing offseason that has been the NFL. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We've seen like 6 starting quarterbacks either get cut or traded or retire or unretire. It's crazy to be a sports fan right now. I believe I have already covered the insanity that is the Russell Wilson trade. But just think about this. The first domino, Aaron Rodgers, signing like the league's highest annual salary in history. I think he's making damn near $50 million a season. Russell Wilson gets traded. Carson Wentz gets traded. He was the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He got traded to the Washington Commanders, the old Redskins team. Matt Ryan has been traded from Atlanta Falcons, where he has been the starter for something like 17 or 18 seasons. Oh, I mean, he's 37 years old. He got traded to replace Carson Wentz in Indianapolis Colts. Deshaun Watson got a king's ransom from Cleveland, of all teams. Now, Cleveland was never taken seriously in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Some of you may not know anything about sports, and I apologize. I'm going to quickly go through this, but Deshaun Watson, arguably, when healthy, is a top 5, top 6 quarterback. And he's in his mid-20s, so he only has room to grow. The upside is God only knows. But he took the entire 2021 season off because he was dealing with 22, I believe, civil complaints against him. Not to mention he's trying to force his way out of Houston, where he plays the Houston Texans, who drafted him and paid him handsomely. He is not the first star athlete to want to get the hell out of Houston. I don't know which organization is run worse. The Commanders, the Texans, the Lions, they used to be the Browns, not so much anymore. Maybe the Giants, the Jets. But anyway, he got traded to Cleveland. Cleveland gave up what I would have loved if we got this from Russell Wilson. But I get it. Russell Wilson is a good 6-7 years older than Deshaun Watson. And let's face it, Deshaun Watson has higher upside than Russell Wilson. Cleveland gave up 3 first-round picks plus more to get Deshaun Watson. And then they gave him an insane extension. He's making almost as much as Aaron Rodgers. There is no guarantee here that Deshaun Watson won't face some kind of discipline or suspension from these criminal lawsuits. Now, the lawsuits, I believe, were settled, or he was found not guilty, or some shit went down. And then like a couple hours later, the trade happened. So, but that doesn't prohibit the NFL from doing their own suspension. So now you think, okay, all this crazy shit went down with all these quarterbacks. Not to mention, there was a lot of backups getting traded, but we're focusing on the starters. Cleveland still has Baker Mayfield, a former number 1 pick only, 4 years ago? The guy is a little Jekyll and Hyde. His rookie year, he played like shit. His sophomore year, he played amazing. His junior year, he played like shit. His senior year was amazing. I think I had that backwards, actually. Last year was awful for him, but the year before he was amazing, and he was hurt from like week 4 on last year. So you really can't judge his 2021 performance without at least acknowledging the injuries. So now he wants out. He said he wanted to be traded to Indianapolis. Well, the Colts didn't want him. They traded for Matt Ryan. So then you look at some of the other teams that need quarterbacks. You have the Carolina Panthers, you have the New Orleans Saints, and then you have the Seattle Seahawks. You could also maybe throw the Detroit Lions in there, but they have Jared Goff. Now, the Panthers came out and said, we do not want Baker Mayfield. So there's that. Panthers have wanted every quarterback that's been available for years, but apparently not Baker. The Saints signed Jameis Winston to a two-year deal. So there goes the New Orleans Saints signing Baker. So then you think, well, maybe the Atlanta Falcons, they just traded away Matt Ryan. They may need somebody. Nope, they signed Marcus Mariota, who I wish the Seahawks would have signed. So now you look at, okay, what are the teams that still need a starting quarterback? It's us and the Panthers. Panthers do not want Baker Mayfield. So now it's down to us and maybe Detroit and maybe Philadelphia. Now, do I think Baker Mayfield would be a good fit in Seattle? Yes and no. I would love it because I like a little bit of personality with my quarterback. Russell Wilson had personality, but it was not the good kind. He was cringy. It was pussified. He was a cuck. Ugh. I couldn't stand him. But on the field, Hall of Fame. Off the field, I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to look at you. I'm done with you. Gardner Minshew is another possibility from Philadelphia. He's the backup. I would love to get a quarterback with a little bit of swagger, a little bit of cockiness, and some charisma. And I think Mayfield and Minshew both have them. Now, to get Mayfield, he only has 1 year left on his contract. I think if we give one of the 2 second-round picks we have next year, 2023, I think Cleveland would do it. Because Cleveland gave up all of their early draft picks for the next 3 years. So they want early draft picks. I wouldn't trade a first-round pick, and I wouldn't trade multiple 2s. I would maybe give a late 2 and then like a 5th or a 6th maybe. Because you're only getting Baker Mayfield for 1 season, and he's only making $18 million, which is a steal for a starting quarterback of his caliber. Now again, he is Jekyll and Hyde. He has good seasons and he has awful seasons, but he's still young. He was the number 1 pick for a reason. Is he going to be another Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold bust? Maybe. Or he could be like a Ryan Tannehill, who just needs a change of scenery and he's going to grow into a pretty decent quarterback. And let's face facts, he's better than Drew Lock, who isn't slated to be our starting quarterback. I hope to Christ that the Seahawks don't draft a quarterback in this year's draft with their first 5 picks. I hope to God they don't, or 3 picks, I should say. If they want to draft a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th, go ahead. I wouldn't do it, but if they take a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd round, I'm going to pick up my TV, bash it on my head, and then we're both going out the window. But we trade for Baker Mayfield. We don't give up anything too drastic. We use this draft to shore up our offensive and defensive lines because that's where this draft is deep. The quarterbacks are shit in this draft. Offensive and defensive line, wide receivers, and I believe not tight ends. There's another position that's pretty deep. Is it safety or corner or linebacker? I don't fucking know. But the offensive and defensive lines are heavy in this one. We have 3 picks in the first, I think 40 picks. Those are the positions I would take. Not a quarterback, not a receiver, not a linebacker, none of this other weird shit that I've been saying. So you trade for Baker, and then you surround him with some good talent, and who knows? If he plays to his ability, then it's a steal, and then you can re-sign him to an extension. If he plays like he did last year, well, you only give up one of your multiple second-round picks, and you can cut him, and he's out the door. So that's what I would do. But I'm not in charge. I should be. So Seahawks, if you're listening, and I know that you are, John Schneider, Pete Carroll, your boy knows. Drew Lock, Geno Smith, Jacob Eason, trash. Baker Mayfield, slightly better than trash. But he's got upside. Drew Lock does not have the upside. I don't believe the hype, okay? Anyway, I'm done here. But football was crazy. The Mariners have disappointed me with their offseason, but I think the lockout fucked them over. We didn't get any giant free agent signings like I thought minus Robbie Ray, the reigning Cy Young winner. But I look at this roster and I think to myself, we were supposed to compete and go to the playoffs this year. I look at this roster, it's slightly better than the teams that we fielded when we were going for it. You know, the 5 times in 20 years that we have. It doesn't fill me with much hope that we're going to break our curse and make the playoffs this year. I still see that we have glaring holes in the starting rotation. We need at least one starting pitcher, and he needs to be at least a 3 or a 4 rotational piece. I look at our offense, I still would add an impact bat, either outfield or infield. And I look at our relieving, and there's a lot of question marks there. I'm more comfortable with our relief core and our infield than anything. But I still would add an impact bat and 1, if not 2, starting pitchers. But again, that's just me. What the fuck do I know? I've only been a long-standing, suffering Mariner fan my whole fucking life, and I've seen this happen time and time again. We're supposed to win, and we don't, and then they fire everybody, and then we have another 5 to 7 year rebuild plan. Ugh. We're putting a lot of faith and trust into unproven prospects this year, and we're supposed to compete and make the playoffs this year. It's hard to do that when you're fielding as many questionable prospects as we are. You can sprinkle in your prospects, but you can't have as many prospects as veterans on a team. You just can't. And that's where I'm afraid we're too close to that 50-50. So, but that's it. We're sports. See, I told you I'd keep it fast. I do want to talk about one movie I did see. I finally saw The Batman. 3 weeks late, I might add. It was everything I thought it would be and more. Somehow it was better than I thought it would be. Now, there's a caveat to that statement because I've only seen it once in the movie theater, high in IMAX with all my buddies. So I need to see it sober and at home alone by myself and see if it still holds up. But what I will say about this movie, this is the first movie really since maybe the first Michael Keaton, Tim Burton movie where they did the, what's the best way of saying this? The ambiance of Batman correct. He is supposed to be scary. He is supposed to be gloomy. He is supposed to come out of the shadows like a monster and scare the bejesus out of people. Now, as much as I enjoyed and loved the Christian Bale Batman movies, they were a little pretentious, and if I'm being completely honest, The Dark Knight is a masterpiece. Batman Begins, pretty goddamn good, but it has its issues. Dark Knight Rises, so many problems in that movie. And don't even get me started on the Ben Affleck Batman movies. They're terrible. I will say the Michael Keaton movies, maybe it's because I'm for nostalgia, but I still hold Batman Returns, the one with Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer and Christopher Walken as the villains, in very high esteem. But the Batman, I didn't think they could do something new with Batman. How many Batman movies have there been in my lifetime? Fucking a dozen or more. That's not including the animated movies, the TV movies. I mean, the Adam West series. Anyway, you're inundated with Batman. It's like Spider-Man. How can they do something new with Spider-Man? Well, you go watch Spider-Man No Way Home. You're like, holy shit, I've never seen this before. Well, Into the Spider-Verse maybe, but not live action. And so with the Batman, I was expecting a B+, A- movie, and I'll be goddamn, people, if I'm hovering over an A+ movie, but it's not a perfect movie. That's why I still say it's probably an A- to an A. There's a lot. I have critiques, but they're nothing major. I gotta say though, they just did Batman right. Just the cinematography, the music, the lighting, the costumes, the fucking gloominess of Gotham. Again, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, I could tell that was Pittsburgh and Chicago. It looked like a city that is believable, but it was almost too believable. This Gotham in this Batman movie, holy shit, it's almost a character in itself. The villains were great. Paul Dano deserves an Oscar. He really does. At least a nomination for playing the Riddler. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to give up spoilers. I will say the first time Zoe Kravitz's character came on screen, my privates got a little moist and I had to change seats because I soaked that seat, baby. And Colin Farrell was so fucking good as the Penguin. I mean, Andy Serkis, the jabroni from who plays Gordon? God damn it, he's such a damn good actor too. Drawing a blank on his name. He was in that shitty HBO series about robots taking over. It was good for season 1, and then 2 and 3 went off the rails. Jeremy something. Not Jeremy Irons. God damn it, let me look it up. It's going to bug me. It's hard for me to fault this movie or anything seriously. Jeffrey Wright, there we go. And John Turturro was excellent. And then you had a bunch of good actors in smaller parts like Barry Keoghan and Peter Sarsgaard. But anyway, if you like Batman movies, but you're sick of like the superhero tropes that you see in every goddamn superhero movie, see The Batman. He is grounded. He is real. It's a detective movie. It's almost as if they took movies like Saw and Seven and put Batman in them. This is a murder mystery, a thriller, a whodunit. It's not Batman all muscular, swinging through the skyline, punching the shit out of the Joker and shit. We've seen that movie. This is lower level shit. This is Batman year 2, I believe. The cops don't like him. There's distrust, but just the way I could keep singing its praises. I rank this movie either number 2 or number 3, but if I watch it again and it still holds up, it may be my number 1 favorite Batman movie of all time. Right now, it is a 3-way tie between Dark Knight, Heath Ledger's Joker, Batman Returns, Michael Keaton as Batman, then Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Walken, Durga, and then The Batman. Now, if I see The Batman a second time and it holds up, it's going to overtake Batman Returns. The only reason Batman Returns is that high to me is because of nostalgia. That movie changed my life. And then Dark Knight, another movie that changed me for the better, but I don't know. It's going to have to do some heavy lifting to beat Dark Knight, because that to me is an almost perfect movie, which this movie is not. The Batman definitely has some obvious criticisms, but as a whole, easily an A- movie. It's so far superior to any Ben Affleck Batman, the George Clooney Batman, Val Kilmer Batman, maybe one of the Michael Keaton Batmans, and 2 of the Christian Bale Batmans. So, fucking A, man. You did it. You did it, Pattinson. People were pissed at that Robert Pattinson was Batman. Oh, the sparkly Twilight vampire. Go fuck yourself. If you still think Robert Pattinson hasn't done shit besides Twilight, you're a good 10 years behind. It's like looking at Daniel Radcliffe and saying, oh, that Harry Potter motherfucker? No. The guy is versatile. Both of them are. Both of them have successfully shooken off that teeny bopper shit. Well, I will say Harry Potter is for adults, not so much Twilight. I shouldn't compare the two, but still, you can compare Daniel Radcliffe and Pattinson and that for that reason alone. But anyway, we're talking about movies. I wanted to get in some other movie stuff, but I think we're running late, so I may keep that for another podcast here. So actually, I think it may be time to wrap up here. Geez, I had some pretty fun topics I wanted to talk about, but we did not get to them. Maybe I'll do a bonus episode or some shit. There was 2 things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to list off and talk about some movies that changed me. Basically going up through the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater. The first movie I ever saw in the theater, I believe, was Beauty and the Beast back in 91? That or Bambi. I don't know. But either way, I made a list of movies, but this podcast is already running late, so that's another podcast. And the other subject I wanted to talk about was how much time do we really have left to be comfortably living in this world? And again, well, those are 2 in-depth conversations. We're just going to have to wait for another podcast. So I apologize for being late. I wanted to do this about a week ago, but, carrying a lot of shit on these shoulders. It gets a little heavy sometimes. So I had to take some personal days and get high and play Skyrim. So I guess we can wrap it up here and say I love y'all. Take it sleazy. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't be a judgy cunt. And treat others as you want to be treated. I'm going to take a bong rip for y'all as my penance for being late. And just know that I'm suffering through this bong hit for you. Oh, that's a big hit. That's a big hit. Let's see what I do for you people. Woo! Ah, lovely. Later, bitches.